If you've been putting in the work in the gym to try and lose body fat, see changes in the mirror and on the scale as well, you're most likely making one of these 4 mistakes in the gym. So I'm going to walk you through each muscle group and one of the most common mistakes for each one. So that way you can avoid this and ensure that you're actually seeing progress when you go. Because if you don't have that clarity, you're going to be lost and you're going to continue to waste your time every single time you go to the gym. So muscle group number 1 that we're going to cover is going to be with your back, right? Many of you are doing your rows 100% wrong, right? So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate one of the most common mistakes, which is rotating your shoulders way too far forward whenever you're doing a row, right? So if I take my hips back, move my head over my toes, knees slightly bent, a lot of you will row like this, right? You dip your head forward, you dip your shoulders forward, and you don't even touch your shoulder blades together, right? So instead, what you want to do is you want to take your hips back, get your knees slightly bent, tap in, pull your shoulder blades together first before you even bend your elbows. Then once you start to bend, you get a serious contraction in your trapezius muscles as you're coming up here. You don't have to excessively arch your back either. You can keep it neutral and then just pull it back, bend your elbows and come right up. And if you have been making this mistake in the gym, it's okay. I've worked with so many men and have reviewed their form and noticed this, and we just nipped it in the bud right away, and their strength started to go up consistently every single time since then, because we were actually targeting the right muscle groups instead of just wasting their time doing something like this, right? The knowledge to know what you're doing in the gym goes a very long way. So that's by far the biggest mistake that most of you make whenever you are training back, rotating your shoulders too far forward instead of pulling your shoulder blades back first and then just bending your elbows. So the next one we're going to touch on is your arms, right? Many of you do something very similar when you're doing curls or even some tricep extensions or push downs, right? You move your elbow way too far forward when you curl. Right? And what happens when you do this is you're still contracting the bicep to a good extent, but you're putting a whole lot of tension on the front of the shoulder as well, right? And same thing if you're moving it backwards, right? Let's say if I were doing a kickback and I'm moving my elbow backwards, right? Trying to do a kickback and I'm moving it too far back, you end up putting pressure on the rear delt. So instead, we always want to make sure we follow the rule of keeping our elbow in one place the whole time and just digging our elbow into our hip. We want to think about digging our elbow inside as we curl, right? And if this is an issue, you can get a bench that's adjustable. Move it all the way up to 90 degrees and place your elbow over the top of it and then curl. And then just ensure that your elbow stays glued to the bench the entire time so you have no assistance from the front of the shoulder or the rear delt. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen different people in the gym moving their elbow way too far forward when they're curling, going like this, right? And it's for one of 2 reasons. Either you're lifting weight that is just way too heavy for you, or 2, you just didn't know, but now you do. So, third most common mistake that people make in the gym, we're now going to touch on chest, and it's relying on barbells instead of dumbbells. If I'm pressing with a barbell, my hands are going to be in one place the entire time. If I'm pressing straight out in front of me, I have no mobility in each hand. And a lot of you do ego lift and lift pretty heavy because, let's be honest, us guys do have an ego. We press out, but if we're lifting super heavy, we start to lose mobility in one hand. We can injure ourselves here because we have no ability to move our hands around, right? We're just stuck in one place. So to negate this, risk for injury, even just getting a pair of dumbbells or some cables as well goes a long way, because now I at least have the mobility to actually move my hands around. So if we're doing an incline press here, right, I'm actually able to move them to the inside. And the further you move your hands to the inside, you not only reduce the risk for injury, basically, because you're not stuck in one place with your hands, but you're also contracting the muscles in the chest more. The further you press to the inside when doing any sort of chest press, the more you contract the muscles in the chest, right? So if you wanted to test this, in case you don't believe me, take your hand, place it on your chest, press straight out in front of your shoulder, and then press to the inside. And you'll feel a much Much greater difference when you're pressing to the inside. Now what I like to do is I like to get some cables and actually cross my hands. So that way, once you actually press right down the middle, I go left over right, come back, then right over left. I'm isolating the chest and I'm pressing to the inside, and I have so much more mobility in each hand, right? So I not only get a more effective chest workout and I isolate the chest more, but I also reduce the risk for injury. So if you are someone that is doing a whole lot of barbell bench pressing right now, but you're not noticing much of a difference in the size and growth of your chest muscles, and it's not getting that toned look, replacing it with exercises like what I just showed you is going to go a long way, right? Now the fourth and final and biggest mistake that most of you guys make in the gym, and of course we save the best for last with legs, is gonna be your squat stance, right? Most of you are squatting with the wrong stance if you've never tested what stance actually works best for you, right? So 80% of the population squats much better with their toes slightly pointed out, and many of you guys walk with your toes barely pointed out as well, right? Almost like a penguin, like I certainly do. So the reason for this is because you have limited internal rotation of the hip, but plenty of external rotation of the hip. Many of y'all's femurs, right, which is the thigh bone right here, aligns outward with your pelvis, pointing out this way, right? So when you try to squat with your toes pointed forward, you feel a whole lot of inflammation and it's really difficult to get that full depth, right? So a real easy fix is to slightly point out your toes, but to double check and make sure that you should be the one to squat with your toes slightly pointed out, what you can do is you can get a bench just like this and do a hip mobility test, right? Basically testing the mobility of your hips. So if I'm able to move my foot super far to the inside, but I'm super limited moving it to the outside, I have plenty of external rotation of the hip. I can rotate my hip externally this way, right? But if we're dealing with the opposite here, if I have plenty of external rotation, right? Plenty of internal rotation of the hip, but super limited external rotation, then I would be one to squat a lot better with my toes pointed forward. But that's not gonna be most of you, honestly, right? But you can do this test in the seated or prone position. Personally for me, as you can see, I have plenty of external rotation. I can move my foot super far to the inside, but I'm pretty limited when it comes to moving it to the outside. So I personally squat a whole lot better with my toes pointed outward instead of straight forward. That's a real easy fix for your squat stance instead of just shooting shots in the dark with your stance and not knowing which one works best, right? Some of you may have a lot of external rotation. You might have to point your toes out to a large degree. There may be others that are in the middle, right? And then there may be a few of you that just squat a whole lot better with your toes pointed forward. And final tip for you as well is taking your shoes off when you squat, if you can, right? If you're working out from home, I would highly recommend to squat barefoot. That way you can grip the floor even more with your toes and really open them up, right? Because if I were to get my sole here, now to test this, if I were to take the sole of my Nike Air Maxes and then place my foot onto it, I would honestly have to pinch my toes together in order to get my foot to fit on this sole here, right? But if I open them up, it starts to go past the sole. So if you are dealing with a corporate gym and you can't squat with your shoes off, I would recommend getting a shoe where you have a wider toe box so you have more freedom of movement with your toes. But this is going to be a big test for you to see here or to test out, because if you are squatting with A, the wrong stance, and B, with shoes that are basically squeezing your feet to where you don't have that freedom of movement to wiggle them and open them up, you're going to be getting a much lower quality squat, right? And if that's something that you're experiencing right now, fixing just one of those things, and especially both, is going to go a long way with improving your squat quality in the gym. But other than that, that's pretty much it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and let me know if you'd like to make more videos like this in the gym going forward. If you'd like to learn more about all the men that I've helped lose belly fat, boost their confidence, and fully optimize their health and strength as well, there's going to be a whole client transformation overview, as well as a video playlist of them talking about the results they've seen down below in the video description, as well as a form to fill out to work with me one-on-one. So other than that, that's pretty much it, and I will see y'all in the next video.